Hey, want to hear a story? A story about these, actually. Dice. As far as problematic things in the TTRPG space go, dice are not the first thing that comes to mind. I mean, who doesn't like dice? They're a fundamental part of how we play these games, and just in general, dice have been with us as humans for generations upon generations. There's a reason why people spend inordinate amounts of money to get pretty, beautiful, exotic dice for their collection. However, while dice may be our unproblematic queens, the people that craft and make them, well, they're people. And people can have skeletons in their closet. Enter Artisan Dice. You see, Artisan Dice started out in 2012 with a very successful Kickstarter, and ever since then, they have been mired in controversy after controversy. Countless Reddit threads warning people to stay away from Artisan Dice for a variety of reasons. From accusations of failed Kickstarter promises, to accusations of poor quality, to concerns around the material that they're making their dice out of, all culminating a possible bench warrant. Yeah, can you imagine getting arrested over dice, of all things? So what does this all actually mean? What actually happened with Charlie Brumfeld and his company Artisan Dice? I mean, surely it can't be that bad, right? Well, without further ado, guys, I think it's time to ask the question we always ask here on Crispy's Tavern. What the hell happened? Okay, Artisan Dice, Charlie Brumfeld. Who are these guys and where do they come from? Well, like I said earlier, they're a dice company that originated from a Kickstarter in 2012. Their first Kickstarter was simply titled Artisan Dice, promising these beautiful, handcrafted wooden dice for just general game purposes. They weren't really targeting a specifically tabletop audience yet. But even though this was more of a general offering, it got a good amount of attention, $90,000. And if you know anything about raising money on Kickstarter, you know that getting 90 grand off your first project is, well, that's quite successful. Artisan Dice had a good reason for their success too. I mean, this handcrafted wood dice boxes and dice, they are alluring. But this Kickstarter was already showing a few red flags. Like, the most notable one being that a lot of people who expected to, get the stuff that they bought, weren't getting the stuff that they bought. Any news for those of us still waiting on a t-shirt? You all should be happy you're actually receiving your ABWCS at all. 18 months after the original order, and apparently, I'm never getting the set I paid for, and I haven't even received the set they supposedly sent in place of it. I'm not getting answers after repeated attempts to contact admin. I've been robbed out of almost $400. Now, this wasn't like every single person. It's not like thousands of people were banging down the doors of this Kickstarter. Frankly, there weren't even thousands of comments, but there's quite a few comments saying stuff like this, and that is concerning. When I go to a Kickstarter, generally speaking, the last thing I want to read is that I didn't get the stuff I paid for. But Charlie Brumfeld had a runaway success. I mean, come on, I'd be riding the high of a $90,000 Kickstarter for a while, and he thought he could do something with this. So, despite the very vocal complaints of backers who were still waiting on some of their dice, allegedly, Charlie opened up a brand new Kickstarter. This one was much more direct in targeting a tabletop role-playing game audience. Beautiful, handcrafted, wooden D20s right on the banner, full of dice sets and dice boxes, all with the promise of Artisan Dice quality, which Charlie was fully owning. He was definitely riding the success of that initial win and wanted to build his brand around it. My name is Charlie Brumfeld. I'm fat, I'm bald, I have an unhealthy obsession with dice. Oh, and I like pie, which is one of the reasons I'm fat. This is thrilling stuff. Scroll. Okay. Nothing about our dice is subcontracted to anyone. Every step of the process is done right here in-house by our craftsmen, unlike a lot of other Kickstarter projects that outsource to a fulfillment company, job shop, or machine shop. Every dollar you spend goes to keep gamers like you making the dice that you love. This is our job. This is our craft. This is what we do. We make dice. We make Artisan Dice. Well, that's a roll credits if I've ever heard one. And it was an alluring pitch. A little pretentious, sure, but I mean, come on. The allure of a handcrafted product, like I said earlier, it's a strong one. And this time, it drew in quite the audience. You thought $90,000 plus on initial launch was a lot? Well, try on almost $300,000 for this Kickstarter. People were ravenous to get their hands on these both metal and wood dice sets. But, I said before that there were like a good amount of winters, but it's not like thousands of people were clamoring to get their dice from an unfulfilled Kickstarter. Yeah, the story with this second Kickstarter, the one that raised almost 300,000 grand, it's slightly different. Another backer here that has received diddly squat. So, the 9th anniversary of this Kickstarter ending, passed with no comment from anyone. Fitting. Remember August of 2014? We were told that 95% of all Dragon Dice have been machined, polished. We have begun shipping the complete orders, and the rest will be shipping before the end of August. Yeah, that was fun. Still haven't got the dice, though. Good to know that we managed to fund this project only to not get the rewards promised. So glad he has the money to go do armored combat and the gym membership to go with it. From what I have found out about the person who was doing the updates, he got his doctorate and even moved to another state. Alright, I don't know much about that last part, but the whole armored combat with the guys who run Artisan Dice, that intrigued me. According to the link, this is what he was talking about. Dallas Warlords Armored Combat Sports. I have no idea how involved Charlie is. I'm not saying that he siphoned money to this other project, but it is frustrating for backers when you haven't received what you ordered for years, and then you see the founder doing something that's rather... Look, I don't want to insult this armored combat extreme sport thing. I'm sure somebody in my audience loves it, but it looks a little gaudy, and it's a little frustrating for the people that aren't getting what they paid for. Now, I'm not saying that not a single person got their reward. That's not true. There were people who claimed they received their dice from Artisan, but guys, there were a lot more people who were saying that they got diddly squat off this Kickstarter. I was pretty merciless to Satine Phoenix when she raised almost $200,000. This is significantly more money, and it is deeply frustrating to see so many people left out in the cold. Now, again, like with Satine Phoenix, a lot of people are probably immediately thinking, lawsuit, civil suit, blah, 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 blah. Look, guys, I don't know how to tell you this, but you might want to be more careful about recommending that sort of stuff. I saw that kind of talk in a lot of the Kickstarter comments, and one, it's most definitely way too late to be taking that kind of action. If you recall, this started in the early 2010s, and we are in the mid-2020s, so yeah, that complicates things. And on top of that, incompetence is not a crime. You would need to prove that Charlie and Artisan Dice never intended to fulfill their promises at all. You cannot punish someone just for incompetence, which is almost definitely the reason that these people didn't get what they wanted. I do think, in my merciful heart of hearts, I do think that Artisan Dice wanted to send out these products. It's not like they were running some kind of active scam. At least I don't believe they were, especially since there are a number of people that did receive their product. It's just, I think they overestimated their own abilities, and unfortunately that left a lot of Kickstarter backers out to dry. But hey, just because it's not malice doesn't mean it's not still bad. That kind of incompetence is still completely unacceptable, especially for a Kickstarter this scale. But on the good end, I did see this guy, Ken Bauer, who has been coming back every year for 7 years ever since the last update to the Kickstarter to remind Artisan Dice of their failure. And you know what? I have to respect the hating energy. I wish I could have haters like this. I mean, right now, my only ops are a bunch of middle-aged flop eras with open sunroofs for hair, who all look like they belong on the sex offender registry. I mean, come on, I need someone with dedication, someone like Ken Bauer here. One of you's gotta step up to the plate, guys, come on. But this is unfortunately not where the story of Artisan Dice ends. Artisan were content to move on to greener pastures. That greener pasture being their website, which has some fascinating offerings. You know what else is an exotic material? Today's sponsor! Yeah, I really don't know where I was going with that one. This video is sponsored by Hit Point Press and their new Kickstarter, Humblewood Beyond the Canopy. This standalone adventure is set for both 5th edition 2024 and 5th edition 2014. It's got 250 plus pages of gorgeous artwork and incredible content. Beyond the massive adventure that takes you across the entire continent of Wesden in a wild and epic chase, you also have plenty of new content for your general 5e games, like 6 new races, a particular favorite of mine being the Sylphs, which are based on hummingbirds. But beyond just the racial customizations, you have an entire new class and 3 new subclasses. Even if you don't use the pre-written adventure, this book has so much content that's worth it just for that. If you guys are interested, head down to the description down below or to the pinned comment where you will find the Kickstarter for the latest Humblewood adventure. Thank you so much to Hit Point Press and Humblewood for sponsoring today's episode. As always, supporting our sponsors does support us. And without further ado, let's get back to the tea. Okay, so the Artisan Dice website has the stuff that you would expect. It's a lot more poorly designed than the vast majority of dice websites I've seen out there. Like, seriously, can someone tell this guy about, like, Squarespace? And by someone, I mean, like, literally the thousands of YouTubers that do ad reads for them. What the hell is this, guys? But anyway, look, ugly website aside, the dice themselves are mostly normal. You know, you see your metal dice, your resin dice, but Artisan Dice and Charlie have made a name for themselves, not for the dice that you expect, but for the dice that you definitely don't. For every dice that's made of metal, you might see dice that are allegedly made with peacock feathers, or ostrich bones, or mammoth ivory. Yeah, that's a bit different. Now, I'm not here to say that Charlie and Artisan Dice are lying about these materials. I'm not here to say that. Because, to be frank, I'm pretty sure they're telling the truth. These dice are not purely carved from mammoth ivory. That's just straight up not how they were made. They are resin dice. The same thing goes for the peacock feathers. The same thing goes for the ostrich bones. These are not made purely of these materials. They're basically glorified inclusions. And, I mean, if you've seen the size of alleged mammoth ivory versus the size of a dice, then you can understand how even just one big old slab of the stuff could last you a freaking lifetime.
Flashback.
Putting on the legal glasses, all of that is my professional opinion. With the peacock dice, I know for certain that the peacock feathers are just an inclusion. The website directly states it. However, I can't say for certain that every single one of Artisan's exotic dice are made with resin. Take that as you will, especially given some evidence later in the episode, but just know that this is all just my professional opinion on the materials. I do not know for certain how the dice were made.
End of flashback.
I'm not worried about materials being counterfeit. I am gonna give Charlie and Artisan Dice the benefit of the doubt and assume that they are telling the truth about these exotic materials that they use in many of their dice. My concern is separate, because I know how resin works. I'm pretty sure Artisan Dice also knows how resin works. Resin can handle inclusions. I'm sure you have plenty of resin dice that have inclusions in them. However, the really powdery stuff, when you add that in, it can make your dice brittle if you add too much, which is bad because, I don't know if you remember this, but you're supposed to roll your dice. And either he solves that problem by just huffing it out and hoping the dice don't break, which is bad, Or he solves that problem by minimizing the amount of mammoth ivory that he puts in the dice, in which case, that's just kind of lame. I mean, I'm buying mammoth ivory dice, and it's just like a small little fraction of it. But, of course, if it's just a small little fraction, I mean, it can't really cost that much, right? Yeah, these things cost double my rent, which is just... that's horrible. Also, and I'm sorry, I shouldn't leave this merely implied, but the dice are hideous. Most of these fancy dice are just disgustingly colored. They are awful to look at. And what's even worse is, you guys know these things look 10 times worse in person than they do just on the camera, where they are done up and all nice and pretty for the photo shoot. If this is how they look for the photo shoot, God knows how bad they look in person. You do not want to buy these things. They are just ugly as sin. But mammoth ivory and ostrich bones are not where Artisan Dice really became infamous, because they have something much more concerning that raised many an eyebrow. The Memento Mori collection of dice, allegedly made with human remains. Where do I even start with this one? So the Memento Mori collection claims that they ethically sourced these human bones by retrieving them from medical skeletons, which makes sense. I mean, I don't know how else you'd go about retrieving human remains out of a person. I mean, come on. Look, I'm not trying to accuse Artisan Dice of, like, grave robbing or anything like that. I'm joking around. But I will say that their sourcing method does still raise questions. Ginny D said this in her video that covered exotic dice materials, but oftentimes medical skeletons themselves are not ethically sourced, and that brings up all sorts of problems. Just generally speaking, if you're pulling material from a living creature, the ethical nature of where it came from is basically always in doubt unless you directly know yourself. And I am 99% sure the Artisan Dice were not doing that background check. Now, ethical sourcing aside, I'm not really here to talk about that problem. Ginny D went into more detail. I'm just here to talk about the dice themselves. For starters, they have the Artisan Dice signature of being ugly as shit. Seriously, this looks like something that came out of someone's asshole. It is gross looking. Why would you buy this? On top of that, the same concern that I have with the mammoth dice carries over to these dice. Because they're crushing up human bones, a powdery material, it can definitely make the resin brittle. It can also result in a lot of bubbles in the resin during the curing process, which is unacceptable given that the full price of these dice is... It makes me want to shoot myself with this gun. Like, good freaking lord, I would not recommend buying these things for a variety of reasons, but that didn't stop some people from doing it, including this Reddit user. I ordered a Memento Mori D20 from Artisan Dice in January. I received it today. Not only is the die mostly resin, not mostly bone as it shows on the product page, there's a big fat bubble in it. For over $300, I expect better. Never again, Artisan. Wow. It's almost like I was right and predicted those things would happen. Crazy, that never happens. But yeah, the point is that it's unsurprising that this guy was very unsatisfied with their purchase. That person waited 11 months to get their dice and ended up getting an incredibly crappy product. But while many people would just sit on the loss, this guy was not taking that $300 charge sitting down. They stood up and took Artisan Dice to court. And according to their testimony, they actually won. The craziest thing is that after Charlie Brumfeld was told, hey, you gotta pay up, he allegedly I stress, did not. And that means that there's a warrant out for him. Back in March, I filed a small claims lawsuit against Artisan Dice for the terrible dice they sent me. I won. They have yet to pay up. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts has an arrest warrant out for him for failure to appear. This is insane. Okay, so what does this actually mean? Well, for starters, I attempted to find the case filing in the Massachusetts legal department, and I could not find it. It is very difficult to find because a lot of the information on that forum was censored, no doubt because the writer wants to protect their identity, which I very much respect. However, it is frustrating that I couldn't find any more details on the case, nor could I verify that it actually happened. There is a non-0% chance that this is not a real claim, that none of this ever happened, that there is no bench warrant. Just keep that in mind. I could not personally verify it myself. That doesn't mean it didn't happen. It just means I couldn't see the case file with my own eyes on the Massachusetts State website, which is not uncommon given that I have basically zero information on the case. But anyway, with that being said, going forward, looking at the paper itself without the censors, what can we see? Well, we can see that classifies Charlie Brumfeld as a debtor. This implies that in this lawsuit, he lost and owes a debt to the court. Failure to appear in this case would therefore mean failure to pay the debt that he owes, which means bench warrant. A bench warrant is not a criminal warrant. I saw some people in the comments calling this guy a criminal, assuming that this case is real. He is not a criminal. You are not a criminal if you have a bench warrant out. It just means that the police have a right to take you in to, make you pay the court the money that you owe. He basically can never go to Massachusetts, otherwise he's screwed. Texas isn't gonna extradite him out for this stuff, but it is trouble and is going to hang over his head. And according to what we can see on the paper, it's gonna last a pretty dang long time. Of course, does this imply some kind of malice on Charlie's part? Again, assuming this paper is real, no, not necessarily. There are plenty of people who have bench warrants out for them for a variety of reasons. I mean, a classic example is guys who fail to pay off their parking ticket. That doesn't mean you're some kind of horrible, malicious criminal. It just means you're a bit irresponsible. Especially since Charlie is in a different state, it's pretty likely that he just forgot. But at the same time, it is absolutely crazy that this guy's utterly horrible products got him a bench warrant as a punishment, and rightly so. This guy had the guts to send this horrific product for $300. Anyway, even with all the drama, Artisan Dice are still around. Their social media presence is a downright zero, though I will say that they never really had a heavy social media presence, though now it is toned down very, very significantly. Recently, they were brought up again in a Ginny D video where she had some very harsh words for them, which is probably the most exposure that they've ever gotten as a company. Beyond that, they're still selling their same Memento Mori collection. You can still buy it. It is up for sale, as well as many of the other dice in this video. These are not old projects. They are still around. Going back even further, there are still people coming back to the Kickstarter year after year after year, coming back to complain about their lack of dice. It's all just real disappointing. Look, even in a world where this lawsuit, this bench warrant, where all of it's fake, none of it's real, none of it happened, blah, 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 blah. Even in that world, Charlie and Artisan Dice are not a company you should be supporting. Their products are straight up ugly, they are overpriced, they're questionably sourced, and also, the guy is horrible with many of his customers. There are countless accusations of poor customer support, accusations of failed promises on his Kickstarters. The Kickstarters that started his career in dice making, which frankly means that, in my opinion, it is a career that he should not have. Do not buy from this company. There are so many incredible dice manufacturers out there that are far more deserving of your support, with dice that look just as good on the camera as they do in person, that are worth the money that they charge. Do not support this guy and his ilk. They are the rotten bottom of the barrel. But yeah, the sad tale of Artisan Dice. A fun deep dive, I must say. If you guys enjoyed it, then you might enjoy our last episode of Critical Failure. We went over the weird rivalry between Larian Studios and Wizards of the Coast. But before you go, please do leave a like on this one and subscribe to Crispy's Tavern so you don't miss any of our content as it comes out. And finally, if you want to leave your own suggestions or thoughts, you can go down in the comments down below. If you can't think of a comment, leave the comment Memento Mori to let me know at the end of the video. In essence, like, comment, subscribe. I will see you all next time. Farewell. Bye.